This is the Leica SL2-S, and the question that we are asking today is whether or not it makes sense to buy this camera here in 2025. Brian here at Random Tech, and last week was the launch of the Leica SL3-S, the successor to this camera. And my initial thoughts on that camera is it's a little underwhelming for a brand new model number. In today's video, we're going to compare the SL2-S versus the SL3-S and see which one might make sense for you to consider. So let's start with the most obvious thing, which is price. So right now, you can actually buy this SL2-S for, it was $29.95 brand new, but I just checked on the B&H site and it is actually gone up by $100. So now it's $3,100, $30.95, which I find surprising. Now, one thing to note is I actually reached out to my local Leica store here in Boston to see if they had a Leica SL2-S to purchase, and they said that they were sold out because B&H actually went to the Leica stores locally and purchased all of those cameras. I'm not sure what they bought them for. Obviously they must have bought them for, a great price, and they used them for stock at their store because the demand for the SL2Ss once the SL3Ss came out are very high. Now, interestingly, if you go to B&H's website, the SL3S is not only being displayed obviously on the site as being a released model, but it's actually in stock. Now, if you follow Leica, you know that many of the Leica products are like, you cannot touch them. You cannot get a hold of one for like many months at initial launch, and sometimes it's years later that you get them. So right now, the Q343, best of luck to you if you are interested in that camera, because those cameras are completely sold out across the board. Local camera shops, B&H, Adorama, all of them. That should tell you kind of how the market is perceiving this SL3S compared to this SL2S. But the SL3S is $5,300 versus, let's call it $3,000 in this situation. Now, I bought mine with the 35mm lens, and I got this for under $4,000, actually quite a bit under $4,000. So I am thrilled. This represents to me a great value. I love Leica. I love the simplicity and some of the features that are on here that are not found on other cameras. So having the ability to buy one at such a good price, a brand new camera with a full 2-year warranty, I think represents a tremendous value. So that is price. Let's move on to the next thing. Now, one of the improvements with the SL3S is something that I think is actually a step in the wrong direction. The SL2S has 2 SD card slots that match, and with the SL3S, you now have, unfortunately, mixed media. So you have a CF Express Type B card and an SD card. I think it's a UHS 2 slot, but these are UHS 2 slots as well on the SL2S. The reason I don't like mixed media is because you can have fantastic performance, let's say in the Type B, but if the SD card can't write at those same speeds, you run into a situation where it's only recording on the Type B card, and as a result, you don't have redundancy. So that is I won't call it a big problem, but for professionals in particular, it would be a big problem because you want redundancy. So having 2 SD card slots, I think, is better, because even if it limits what you could do with the camera, it's better to have 2 matching media slots as opposed to just one. Now, Sony, I think, does it the best, where they have these flexible slots where you can record either into an SD or CF Express Type A. You choose whatever works best for you. All right, another new feature on the SL3S is something that I don't particularly care for, and that has to do with the switch on the back. So you can see on the SL2S, this is a simple on-off switch that is obviously easy to turn on and off. The SL3S now features a push button power switch, which for some, maybe they like that, but to me it feels a little bit more like a computer. And the bigger issue that I have with it is I routinely use gloves. I live here in New England and it is freaking cold. Like 3 months, at minimum 3 months out of the year. Sometimes it extends to like 4, even 5 months, depending on the year. And I am wearing gloves all the time. So I need to be able to use my camera with gloves on. And when I don't have a physical switch to confirm, I guess it's a button. It is a physical button, but it's different, right? When I click this on, like you could feel the clickiness, click it off, boom, now it's off. So that to me is really important. And that also kind of rolls into the next difference between these two camera bodies. The SL2-S and the SL3-S, they're both IP54 rated for waterproof and dust protection. And again, I'm here in New England and I'm out in all kinds of elements: rain, snow, sleet, sometimes at the beach. Like there's a lot of elements that I find myself in that are pretty challenging. So having a sealed body, I think, is a good thing. And the SL3-S, I think, has like now this articulating screen. It tilts up and down, but anytime you do that now, it's even a little bit more challenging to seal that body. So having the fixed screen on the back, I think, is a good thing for the SL2-S compared to the SL3-S. And I will also say that if you're using these cameras, one of the benefits of using either camera is the fact that you have this beautiful EVF. And that is something that hasn't changed between these two cameras. So the EVF in the SL2-S is exactly the same as the one that's in the SL3-S. It's a 5.76 million dot EVF, and it is beautiful. It really is a nice EVF. One other thing that is the same between these two cameras is the sensor itself. I think they said that it is improved a little bit for low light capabilities, but the sensor itself, from what I can tell and what everyone else is sharing online, it looks to be the same sensor. So similar readout speed, similar performance. I think maybe it might have a little bit more better performance with higher ISOs, but I don't know that for sure. And I don't have an SL3 to test against it, but the SL2-S is excellent on its own in low light, so I'm not terribly concerned about that on this particular camera. Now, the other thing that I was really surprised at was that they didn't offer uncropped 4K 60, which is almost unforgivable here in 2025. There are just too many other options out there that have that provide that, and to not build that into the SL3-S, I think, is a huge miss. For video, I mean, the SL3-S is certainly better than the SL2-S for video because it features phase detect autofocus as opposed to contrast only. But I don't know many people that are buying Leicas for video. Let me know down in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't see many people using these cameras just for video. For hybrid use, maybe some people do use it, but I've turned the video switch on this camera for like a little bit, but I mean, I'm just using this mostly for stills, not for video. And one other thing that they added on the SL3-S that this camera does not have is up on the top, they have a dial that's on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side of the camera, and it's nice to have that additional dial, but the beauty of Leica is its simplicity. So I find that when I shoot with the SL2-S, I almost exclusively use it like this, right? Where I'm just holding it like this, just like kind of like a traditional camera, and I do everything with my right hand, nothing with my left. If I did that, if I took my hand off the lens, I'd then have to, hold it like this, which isn't the end of the world, but it's like, it changes the balance of the camera, and it doesn't give you a real firm grip on the camera. So if you're shooting on a slow shutter speed, that's a bit of a challenge. Now, let me just show you real quick how well thought out this is in terms of the UI. So that's one of the reasons to get a Leica, and I know a lot of people talk about this, but it really is true. It is a different shooting experience. Even if the technology is the same with some of the other cameras, the build quality of the camera and the UI that you interact with are far superior to anything else that's out there on the marketplace. So let me just show you real quick what I'm talking about. So one of the nice features is, all these buttons are like fully customizable. So when you're shooting, again, in manual mode, you can quickly switch it over to aperture priority. I've got a button programmed on the front here where it can now all of a sudden be an aperture priority. And then I can use my scroll wheel here on the back, my command wheel, for exposure compensation. So that's the way I have it set up most of the time. But in the event that I do want to go into manual mode, right? Now I'm in manual mode with the M on the bottom. Now what I could do is, instead of using the command wheel here for exposure compensation, now it's actually controlling my shutter speed. So I can slow down the shutter speed here, get a better exposure, and I can use this dial for my aperture, right? And now I can also control my ISO. If I simply push in this command wheel, now I have access to my ISO. So I can bring that up, bring that down, however I see fit. Or I could just simply set it to auto ISO and it'll do the trick just there. And then I can go in here and use one of these buttons to manage my exposure compensation, right? So there's like a million different ways that you can set up this camera. It really is very handy. And again, the UI is just something to, unless you've experienced it yourself, you don't necessarily know how good it really is. So this isn't all doom and gloom for the SL3-S. There may be a couple reasons why you would want to purchase the SL3-S versus the SL2-S. For starters, the autofocus I talked about a little bit, but the autofocus is much better on the SL3-S compared to the SL2-S. In addition to that, you've got 6K open gate recording. So if you are someone who is need vertical content as well as horizontal 16:9 content, and that's important to you, then maybe that's a good solution for you, having that 6K open gate. The other thing, of course, is the tilting screen. So if you need that type of tilting screen where it tilts up and it tilts down, it's nice to have, but again, I think it's not necessary for me personally because I'm doing mostly photography and I prefer to use the EVF. The challenge there is if you're looking for some of those features, there are other cameras, specifically like the Panasonic Lumix S5 II and S5 IIX, that offer all those features and more. And those are really geared toward videographers and filmmakers, so they have more tools in them as opposed to the SL3-S. And it's a lot less expensive, right? You could buy the S5 IIX for under $2,000. So you're paying more than twice that amount for the Leica SL3-S. Even though the UI is considerably better than the Lumix, is it worth that extra price or that extra cost? I can't decide that for you. You've got to decide that on your own. So overall, I think the SL2-S represents, at this new price of around $3,000, a tremendous value. There are, of course, a lot of cameras at that $3,000 mark that offer more features and they have better autofocus and all that stuff. But for someone like myself who needs a camera to be as rugged as possible and to be able to use it with gloves on, this is a fantastic camera. And I haven't even talked about the image quality. The images that you get out of this camera are truly excellent. They are very, very clean at ISOs all the way up to like 25,000. It's just a fantastic camera. And the nice thing is since it is a Leica, it will hold its value over time. So if you spend $3,000 on this camera, you might be able 3, 4, 5 years down the road to sell this for about half of that, about $1,500. Because look at what the SLs are selling for right now. The original SL601s, those are selling for around $1,500, sometimes $1,700, $1,800, depending on the condition. So the proof is in the pudding. So anyways, those are my thoughts on the SL2-S versus the SL3-S. Let me know down in the comments which one you think makes more sense for most people. Clearly, I think it's the SL2-S, but maybe you feel differently, and you can certainly let me know down in the comments. If you did enjoy content like this, I just kindly ask that you smash the like button and maybe subscribe to the channel for additional content like this. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you in the next one. Take care.